This is Professor Homa. I'm back with part 2 of part 1 of Holiday Card 2, if that isn't confusing enough. But the first part of that exercise that we worked on, which involves this, I'm doing this in 2 parts because it took longer than I thought. But what we did last time around is we put a layer mask on here and we silhouetted around this image to try and make it look like it's part of the background. Now before I do any image adjustments or anything like that, I'm going to make a new layer that's above. I'm going to go down to my layer palette. I'm going to make a new layer that's above layer 1. And actually, I'm going to name layer 1. I'll just call it barn, so I know that's my right layer. And layer 2 I'm going to call cloning. I'm going to do some cloning on layer 2. And you don't have to do it on a separate layer, but I'm going to do it on another layer just in case I screw up, or B, I don't really like it, I can take it away. Or I can erase parts of it. So what I'm going to do on this layer is use my cloning tool, and if you remember using your cloning tool, it's the one that looks like a rubber stamp, and you want to have a decent sized brush, especially doing stuff in the sky. I like to have maybe double the size of this, or maybe even a little bit more. Obviously a smaller brush to get it more detailed work, but for right now, this is probably a good size. I want to probably go down on the hardness, get it real soft if you're working on the sky. And again, if you're cloning pixels, I'll click up here, if you're cloning pixels, you want to follow so that the tone of the sky follows as you go down. So if I'm getting rid of this pole, I want the sky to kind of match to the left. So we're going to be kind of cloning vertically down, matching the sky that's here. So I'm going to option click, like when I hold down an option, that's what happens. That's my sample point. So I'm going to option click first, and then I'm going to leave go of my mouse, and then I'm going to go over here, and it should even. Actually, one thing, I'm not seeing a preview here. That's because this should say all layers. Because I'm cloning on a new layer, on an empty layer, it's not cloning. So it should look like that. It should show me kind of a preview of the sample point of what's going to happen. So make sure that that says all layers up top. So that because what I'm doing is I'm sampling from the layer below. I'm working on a transparent cloning layer, but I'm sampling from the barn layer. So that's why that has to say all layers. Anyway, I'll continue down here, and you can see what happened. The sample point is following me as I move down, and see if I go too far, it's actually sampling the top of that other barn that's behind here, which I don't want. So I could just re-click, I'll re-option click, and even before I click and actually paint, I could just kind of preview what it's going to look like, and I could just paint. Now it's a soft brush, so I'm not getting really hard edges. I could get rid of these power lines up here, kind of going up on an angle like that. I'm going to try and do everything kind of parallel. And I'm going to start painting and going up, and I can see a little bit of stripe there, so that's maybe something I need to fix up a little bit. And some of this I may even want to use a bigger brush over here. I want it to be not noticeable. Let me get even rid of this kind of white part that I created. So even though the sky looks like one color, there's lots of multi-tone in it. So, and it's very easy to make it look doctored. The whole idea is you want it to look natural. But even though it's clouds, you still got to be careful. And that's okay. A couple areas up here that you need to clone out a little bit more, just to make the cloud look more natural. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just don't want your eye to go to it and have it look, look natural. The idea was to get rid of the pole and the wires, not bring attention to them. Some little wires down here I could get rid of. I think I might just leave them there for now. But if I was going to get rid of the rest of the pole, I'd want to zoom in here real tight and use a smaller brush. So I'll go back to my cloning tool, take my brush down almost about the size of the pole itself, and I'm going to make it a little harder because I have harder edges to work with here. So I'm going to option click on this barn right on there, so I could use that roof line and kind of clone over it, which I did, and it looks okay from that end. And then I'll kind of work horizontally here I'll option click here and just kind of replace that little area there. See, that looks pretty good. And I'll do that, and I'm just kind of working horizontally, and I'm re-clicking each time. Each time I go, I'm option clicking a second time. Now I have to watch. There's a little shadow here of the sun, so I'm going to try and clone that so I can keep that See that diagonal line? And as I option click, I'm getting a little bit of the pole here. Again, I don't want to... I may even have to get in with a smaller brush now, because my sample area is picking up other things that I don't want. So I'm just kind of moving side to side here. You could sometimes just paint, or you could sometimes kind of brush. And I'm option clicking right next to what I want. And here I'll do some of these kind of this siding that's kind of losing some paint. And then over here I have a little more open area to the right side of it. So I'm actually cloning out now those, like I guess that's like the ground wire that goes up there, and then I'll clone over in this direction, get rid of that, and I'll option click right on that snow line to get rid of that. I can even move down here a little, and then I'll option click on that snow line and line it up, and then this should be easy here in the snow, although I don't know what that is, and I'll work from this direction. And I'll even do this little snow line of where there's some like plowed snow here. And I'll get some of this, well, I'll get this line here just so I can get some of the snow above it. Then it'll be easy to go in here and kind of attack this pole area. And then again, wherever you see a line, I'm going to option click and get that line and then kind of like line it up. It's not too bad. I mean, you may see some things that look kind of unnatural, but again, we are zoomed in pretty good too. And sometimes you want to clone from both sides. And that looks pretty good. So over here I'm seeing, I'm not sure what that is. And up here in the sky, there's a little bit of the sky I want to kind of fix. Also, there's some of this line in the background that I want to fix a little too. And I'm not doing that perfect, but enough so that no one notices that. And again, there's some wires here that I could get rid of. Even clone that little line here, but just be careful of what you're lining up here. Here's a little... I don't want to mess up the tree too much. Some of this might be better off left alone, but I think that's okay. I don't think I see much more of the line. There's a line here which we can get rid of. Kind of paint over that. And the nice thing about painting on a different layer is I could look at my before and after and see how well I did. And doesn't look too bad. There's some area up here that I kind of covered up. I don't think it's really gonna. I don't think there's anything that I might just cover up that little dark spot up there. I don't think anybody's going to notice that, especially at far away too. But that looks pretty good. Luckily, barns are a little misshapen at times. But that's cloning, and something else I might want to clone that was recommended in class is cloning out. I'll use a bigger brush here, and maybe softer, is cloning out these tracks. Now I would want to clone right next to them. So I'm cloning the snow area right next to it. And you have to be careful when you paint with a big brush. It's also sampling that big brush area, so it may be sampling more areas than you want. So as I go back here, I'm going to just make my brush a little bit smaller. Just kind of go back here. I could actually go right behind that, because remember, this isn't even on that layer, so notice that I could actually clone right behind it. And I think I'm going to leave the other tracks to make it look like they were from the wagon or something. So I'm going to stop there with the cloning. I'll zoom out just to see how things look. And again, here's my before and after. Got rid of the tracks and the poles, and it looks decent. There's nothing here that's looking too artificial. So I'm going to stop here, but that's a review of cloning. Remember, you option click to set an area, and you paint by using background pixels. And if you're working on another layer, like I did with this cloning layer, make sure that this says all layers so that it's sampling from layers underneath. Because if you try to sample from the layer you're on, there won't be any pixels there, so nothing will happen. So we did a silhouette on this, and we did some cloning, and I think we're pretty much done. So I'm just going to save this as a PSD file. Any kind of other image adjustments and things like that, I think I'll wait for our other exercise to work on. So I'll just leave this at two parts. This was the first part of that Holiday 2. So it was just a review of using a layer mask to do some silhouetting, using a quick selection tool to originally create the layer mask. And again, this girl in the wagon is on a separate layer, and we call this a composite, but then we could save it as a JPEG and have it all together as one flattened image. So I'm going to stop here.